In this lesson, we're going to continue to build the quiz, and we already have it that we have a start game, and then we output the question, and the questions have a number of options. So we need to still apply some styling to these options, and right now the order is always going to be the same, that the last answer is going to be the correct one. So we want to use some JavaScript in order to randomize the order and shift the order of the options within the array so that when we're outputting them, that they're actually randomized. And we're going to be using an array method. So using the array sort method, and what sort method does, it allows us to sort elements of an array in place, and then it returns the sorted array. So that means that because we are using an array, it's not going to actually, we don't have to have a new variable, we don't have to have anything else. It's going to reorganize the options list here within the array, so making it a random, well, it's going to be random. Right now we're just going to use the sort, and then we'll add in to the sort an option for random return. So let's see what that looks like right now, and going into where we're creating the new question, and as we're loading the options, we want to reorganize the option list. So let's do that right off the bat, where we've got the new question and we're pulling in the element object of the question, and this is going to be the element options array. And for that array, if we do a sort, what will happen is that this will sort the order of the options. And right now nothing has changed because we haven't randomized the sort order yet, so it's still always outputting at the end. So let's go and take a deeper look into what we can do with sort. So the default sort automatically sorts the arrays from, if they have values, from the alphabetically and also numerically, so it counts them as string values and will sort them accordingly. There's also what's known as the compare function within the sort. So this is an optional parameter that is a function that returns the sort order, so it does a comparison between the first element and the second element comparison. They've got some more details at the Mozilla Developer Network about it, and essentially what it does is that sorts the array in place. So it's not making a copy of the array, it's just sorting it in place, and they've got some options here for compare functions. So if A and B is in the compare function but we return less than 0, then the sort A of the index lower than B, A and B returns 0, and it returns it unchanged. If it returns that 0 that returns greater than 0, then B index is lower than the first one, and it just changes the sort order. So basically, to summarize, what it's doing here is if it's being returned back as a -1, then that's going to affect the sort order when we do the compare function. If it returns it back as a 1, then it's also going to change the sort order by ordering it according to the criteria. And if it's 0, then it's just not going to change the sort order. So if we have some randomizing here, then we can update and we can randomize the way the sort order works. So we've got a function within the sort order, and we're returning back a value, so it could be either a negative or a positive. So let's add that in to the sort, where we've got the function. So we're using the arrow format, and it's returning back, and the value that it's returning back can be either a negative or positive. So right now we'll just return back a value of -1. And let's actually use the curly brackets around there for the return and save. And we'll see what that looks like. So refresh, start the game. And now you see that what's happened with the order is that blue is on top. If we return it back as 1, it's gonna, for the options, and actually we need to start the game first to trigger that function. So blue is now at the bottom. So depending on whether it's negative or positive, it's changing the sort order. So if we were to randomize the negative or the positive, then this would give us a randomized sort order when we're doing the comparison. So if we do a subtraction of 0.5, and we know that with math random, So if we use math random, the function in JavaScript is going to return back a random value. So starting at 0 decimal all the way up to 0.999, starting at 0.000 and a number of digits after that. So it's basically returning back a random number and decimal placed number. So if we do a subtraction, -5 minus math random, this could either be positive or it can be negative. So depending on what we end up, so there's a few negatives. So when we're doing the comparison function and we're returning back a negative value, we saw that it affects the sort order. So let's add that in where we're doing -5 minus math random. And you don't have to round it up or down. We're just using whatever the random value is because we're subtracting it off of the -5. Let's make this smaller. And we'll clear out the console content and hit start. And now we've got blue as the second slot, again. And it's making it random. So there it was at the end. So blue can show up in any one of the slots. And that's what we ultimately want it to do by structuring the options within an array so that we can easily randomize where we're outputting those options onto the page. So also let's add in some styling into the project. So where we've got within the HTML file, we can just add in the styling there. I'll give it a class of box, and this will be for the options. So let's display them as inline block items. Give it some padding around. So, but we do some 5 pixels of padding. And add in a border. And just do a very slight border. And also round slightly the border. So do a little bit of rounding. See what this looks like, and then we'll go back in and adjust the styling. So let's add that to the div. So as we select the div options and using class list, adding the class of box to the element. So that gives us more of kind of like a clickable type button. Let's also adjust the cursor and select it as a pointer. And we'll do a margin. So top and bottom 0, and we'll do 10 pixels for the right and left. So that will add some spacing between them. Maybe that's a little bit too much. And let's set the minimum width to 100 pixels so that they're all roughly the same. And we can also text align, and let's center align the text. So we've got all of our options there, and of course we need to still style the question. So now they look more like clickable options. And within the box, let's add the hover effect. So whenever we're hovering over the selection, we can update the background color. So now making the selections as we hover over them. And if we make it wider, let's also add in some styling into the question. So save that, and where we're creating the question, so that's under Q1, and class list, add the question styling. So start the game, and let's make a larger font size for this one, and also set a margin at the bottom for it. So it's not exactly right on top of the options. And then of course you can style this as needed. I'm also going to make a few other adjustments to it because I want to capitalize the first letter there. So let's do, you can do that with JavaScript, where you can select the first letter that we're outputting within the question and just do a capitalization of that first letter. So this is going to be a string output, and then manipulating the string output. So take the string output, and taking the character at, so this is a string method where you can select the character, so taking whatever the first character is and then using the two uppercase, and I'm just going to reset the string output to be whatever the new string output is. And if we just take the first character to uppercase, let's update the output, and then we need to add in the rest of the question. And let's double check and see what we've got for our string output. So it looks like we're throwing an error there, and that actually should be an R. That's why we're throwing the error there. It should be character at. So it's returning back the first character there, and we want to add in the rest of the string value. So concatenate to it, and taking the string output and using slice. So we slice out the rest of the string content, just removing the first character, so returning back whatever the rest of the characters are. So that allows us to capitalize that. And also we can add in a question mark at the end as well. So returning back the string output, and here where it's just concatenate a question mark to it. And that should be actually a plus. So let's see what that looks like. So now it looks like we've got quiz options, and coming up next we want to introduce the next step in this, that we're going to load the next question. So once the user makes a selection, we're going to set it to either right or wrong, and then depending on what was selected, we can either do a green or red background to indicate that they got it right or wrong, and then also show the button for the next question if there is another question. So that's all still coming up in the next lesson. Task for this lesson is to randomize the order of the options. So you can use the same format that I did with the array prototype, using the sort and the comparison, and then randomize the comparison to return back either a positive or a negative result, and that will update and sort the array in place. Also apply some styling to make it look nice. So whatever the content is that's being output, so we want to present it to the user in a nice format. So you can also uppercase the question as well as add the question mark at the end, and then make the buttons so that you can click them, and also that they look more like buttons for the options. And also make sure that the quiz is working as expected, so apply any styling or debugging as needed into your code, and you could be ready to move on to the next lesson. We're going to be continuing to work on the application to create the interaction for the next question.